seekers of truth, Council of Tomorrow. I'm gonna give you something new to feast on. But first, look at this. Why is it another of the same old California bridges that we've seen for the past several months? Why, yes, it is. We've got even more for you. The 4th Street Viaduct. And at this point, I couldn't tell you if we'd covered this yet or not. Now, this is simply yet another of the elegant, sturdy crossings over the LA River and the railroad tracks that were built by the city of Los Angeles. And while we've seen similar locations and structures, still, we do our diligence and we go through the survey and we see what they found interesting at this time, what they found to be commendable and memorable and historical, they being the powers that be. And aside from the lovely additions from the local artists, you can see, as mentioned many times on here, the telltale. The light fixtures are very symbolic of an old world, an older time, a time very different from what we have now. And we are trying to bridge the gap that seems to be inadequate. The stories we're told don't seem to match. So we are setting out on our own, and we're trying to explain why LA would have things like this underneath such things as this, and why was it prettier before? Why was it better? And are the same people responsible for it that we think? See, I see a scene like this very old world structure here, and here amidst piles of excavation and dirt. Essentially, I mean, where did all this dirt come from back here? Where did all this dirt come from? Mountains, almost. Hills, at least. Whatever they're doing in the area, that's quite the excavation. Couldn't be this, could it? Couldn't be all of this. No. But regardless, why this? Why the big spans, the large spans, over such a tiny trickle? Well, because this didn't used to be a tiny trickle, is probably the correct answer. Because they dam it up, and then they sell it back to us. That's the name of the game that we're in. This little slavery game that we're all playing. Until then, this remains unexplainable, other than that was the style at the time. Note these columns. It's almost as if it were wrapped, isn't it? Yes, almost. What to make of that? Well, apparently nothing. These little organ cactus looking attachments, let's say. Accoutrement. And quite a substantial, amazing piece of architecture. And very much at odds with, even this rustic thing, really. This old pole. Looking rather dumpy. Looking rather insecure, actually. I mean, that's one hell of a way to wire your neighborhood. But we are told to ignore these things and ignore the shape, ignore the splendor, ignore the way it stands out in this otherwise dreary world of industry, ignore the unnecessary opulence and particular attention paid to detail. Ignore all that. Look at this. Oh, yeah. I mean, look how starkly ugly this is. And even this bridge can't even help it. It's just, by comparison, looks just amazing. And maybe it's just me. I don't know. But these just look a lot nicer than the light poles that are in my neighborhood. They're a lot newer. And we're either really regressing, or these weren't built by us. That's for you to decide. But none of this makes sense to me. I love it, but it doesn't make sense. Here's another one. Just endless. It's a long, long series of bridges here in Los Angeles. And very cool. Ah, yes, of course. Is this supposed to tell the story? There we go. Here they all are. All the bare-chested men. Bare-chested bald men that built this place while wearing roller skates. I remember that story. The roller skating construction team of Los Angeles. Very famous, we're told. And very beautiful, that is. Sigh. And of course, brick and weird crests that we're unfamiliar with. Looking closely, I can see the eagle. How dare you, you shifty feller. Try that again. The eagle. What the... The eagle. Thank you very much. He's not looking like a normal freeway overpass, if you ask me. Looking a little, castle-like. Not saying it is a castle, I'm just saying it looks castle-like. It's castellated, alright? And yeah, very halfway through the project. Seems a little, odd to me. Seems like you just actually laid this part down on top of this, maybe. And, what are these? Little, stone clansmen? Yeah. Looking very normal. I'm sure that this is all there is to it ever. There was never anything in these cavities, or they're just little places to go stand under in case it starts raining, I guess. Which actually isn't a bad idea, but I don't think that's what they're for. Who knows what they were for? Probably arts for art's sake. No. Actually, I don't believe that. Not with these. These look functional. These look like they used to house something. They need to be protected from the elements. I mean, that's what I would guess. This housed something. I don't know. Was it some sort of quartz crystal? Something that gave light out? Or it needed these openings to beam out some sort of signal or light or beam, but it needed to be protected from the elements, hence forces. I mean, I don't know. I would have guessed it would be some sort of a light. But now we got this little thing hanging out the outside of it, like it pooped a little glass bulb out, like it's a water faucet just barely turned on, leaking out this thing. This is what it looks like, I mean. But what we're looking at is Franklin Avenue Bridge. It's the Shakespeare Bridge, also known as. Very prominent Los Angeles landmark. This structure is. Why it demonstrates the Bureau's capacity to design a residential scale span as well as the monumental Los Angeles River Bridge, which were constructed at about the same time. Well, of course they were. These little Gothic towers, little turrets are the prominent historical architectural feature. There are 8 of these, and as you can tell, they are kept up with this knob finial, which we're told is entirely decorational. Little globe on the top there. They claim it was built in 1925 for the purpose of connecting Franklin Hills to East Hollywood in the Ivanhoe district. The designer was J.C. Wright, and it was completed in 1 year. Now, they had to remove the entire bridge deck to retrofit it to protect it from earthquakes. It's weird how they do that thing where they take everything apart, they send it off to fix, and they bring it back, and it's just not quite the same. But allegedly made better. And it says here the extent of the seismic retrofit on this bridge meant that a great deal of historic fabric was removed, of course, which diminished the bridge's integrity of design and materials, according to the finding of adverse effect. In order to receive federal funding for the project, each of the retrofit changes had to undergo a process of mitigation. Oh, I see. This is the part where they say, yeah, so, that's why we took pictures of it, because we fucked it all up. They were supposed to reconstruct some handrails, reconstruct the towers and turrets, re-clean and rewire the lampposts. Some of the missing light fixtures replaced, not all. And, the 1971 seismic retrofit was undone, and the damage to the historic appearance was restored. The historical marker was redone. The traffic signs removed off the bridge and relocated. So that's kind of funny that they actually fought that to the point of I'm confused by this. Well, anyway, there was a fight over it, and it's not the same. How about that? You know it's not the same. Which is too bad for old Franklin Bridge, though it still is rather remarkable, although this is actually a different one. And these are those same pictures in color of how it looks today. Or at least more today-ish. And yeah, it really stands out, doesn't it? Quite striking against the very regular and ugly surroundings. And then, wow, look at that. Amazing field. Looking a little foundationally challenged over there, aren't you? All these buildings are really. Where do you get these sort of mounds from? Either that's a pyramid, or you guys moving dirt or whatever to get at some of this stuff. Hell, I don't know. This is saying what it looks like. This shit looks like, if you're being honest with yourself, this looks like it's been buried in sand halfway. Or like water came down this way. Right? And just pushed up against all these buildings, and then when the water receded, it left a layer of mud. This looks like water flow. And that's just what it looks like to me. Water came through here. I mean, this one looks buried. They all look kind of buried. What we're looking at is the Harry Carey Ranch Complex. This is a series of structures in the ranch that's built in the 20s and 30s, allegedly, when Harry Carey and his wife, Olive, they were members of the early motion picture industry. Because the property played a role in the formative years of the film industry itself, and specifically to the location, it's strongly associated with a historically significant trend, the development of the motion picture industry in the region. So because it was a subject of so many films, it's basically on the survey. I find this photograph to be interesting, where we see underneath layers of what looks like sort of like plaster and paint and mud. Brick, of course. Brick at the heart of everything in the old world. Brick. You know, it's amazing. Of all the industries that we hear about, we don't ever hear anything about the brick industry. We hear about the salt industry, the sardine industry, the lumber industry, the mining industry, every industry, the copper industry, the silver, the gold, the oil, the citrus, the cotton. But no bricks mentioned ever, or rarely. There was mention of brick lobbyists that were battling against the reinforced concrete, and the brick buildings fell down and the concrete ones didn't, or so we're told, by the completely controlled press, who, as we learned later, was deeply in cahoots with the places that the concrete industry were deriving the base material from with which to make the concrete. Scandal after scandal after scandal after scandal. And that's not brick, that's block. That's why it's falling apart. Actually, it looks like a freaking old pirate with an eye patch. He's like, yar. He's like, hell, I don't remember. Many years since I've been on this farm, Jezebel. And that's where you'll be sleeping, Jennifer. Dinner's at 8. In any case, the Harry Carey place, while looking rather dug out, or dug in, as it were. Interesting that the brick ones are the ones buried, but the block ones seem to be fine. This is block. That one I think is block as well. The brick one is buried as hell. I mean, Jesus, who would build like this? Come on. You mean to tell me this isn't flooded into the ground? Give me a freaking break. Kind of looks like water came from up here at some point, or silt or whatever, just flowed down here. Eventually, just kind of dumped all over this damn thing. That's what it looks like to me. Even the tree branch looks like all bent and submerged. Maybe it's just me. Stick your finger in there, Peter. I freaking dare you. I already did, or I would. That's right. This is the Harry Carey brand. That's what I thought. Well, forgive me for not caring too much about Hollywood at all, and therefore not caring too much about this ranch at all. So we're gonna move on to the break of dawn to these busted ass cabins on these dumpy little lawns. And some more cabins that look like they've been bum rushed by sediment at one point. Not making very much sense. And of course, the ever present brick lurking beneath the surface, despite the additions to the home. The wheels begin to huddle. Who knew that empty spools of wire could play football? As they huddled, I anticipated the lineup. Up, and there they were. I don't know what all this is, but I wonder why there's a massive brick chimney out front. And that alone is worth exploration. What you're looking at is the boiler house at the southwest corner of Building 4305, the Unicon Portable Hangar. This is Edwards Air Force Base in Kern County, in Boron, and a curious building, to say the least. This being a hangar of sorts. Not sure what exactly is going on with this series of tubes in here. This here, Fort Edwards, was originally a remote secret facility testing the U.S.'s first jet-propelled military aircraft. And then afterwards, I believe it turned into a testing site for F-100s and other fighter jets. Today, however, it's only the testing ground for my patients. And here, there's a lovely picture of it. You can see it's a exclusivity. Why not many people get invited to this exotic remote resort? Not looking like the same building, if that's what they're trying to say, but whatever. Is this evolution over the years? From wood to concrete to this? I mean, I don't even think that's the same building. Did you move the rail tracks too? Yeah, not buying that. Yeah, that looks totally normal. Nothing to see here. Oh, of course. I'm not going down there. You go down there. We're supposed to just see these foundations and believe this is normal. Something that was here that is now blasted off its foundations? Why? What is this? It's ridiculous. So secretive. So secretive. I mean, if anyone saw anyone out here in this desolate field, they would be suspicious, regardless of what they were doing. Okay. Can't help but shake the feeling that this looks like it's already here, and they're just cementing the rest. This motherfucker working in his shoulder helmet? Bro, there's gotta be a better way. Gotta be a better way. And here's the pool, I guess? That they were making? What is all this then? Not that they weren't doing stuff here that they say they were. I'm sure they were experimenting with jets but I mean, these foundations don't make sense. That they were just here and then there's nothing there. Like, don't make sense at all. So amazed by how much of this has been military. California just didn't expect that for some reason. Guess they're kind of quiet about it. I mean, I know it's pretty obvious on the coast, but in the mainland, it's just I guess it's something you just don't think about as often as you should. Apparently. And here is the Big Tujunga Dam. And I'm not making that word up, although I might be mispronouncing it. Quite the feat. Again, taking your water and then selling it back to you in the form of electricity. There it is. Leonard and Day. I wonder if this is any relation to Mr. Weeks and Day. Day guys everywhere. Day taking over the world. This property, we are told, really isn't on here for any reason other than its association with J. Paul Getty, an important figure of national recognition, and the museum that the house is now. Though it originally started out as part of an early 19th century Spanish land grant, Claude Parker, a LA attorney, purchased a portion of this from Perfecto Marquez, descendant of one of the area's original settlers. Parker built the house, we're told, and in 1945 he sold it to Mr. Getty, successful American businessman, art collector, and philanthropist, who then turned the place into a museum and art gallery. And its association with him is why it qualifies for listing, not because of its age or origin. Quite a lot of digging here for such a new property. After all, if it was built in the 40s, and these pictures were taken, 20 years later? Interesting. And of course, very modern. Ultra-modern, I'd say. Not sure what's going on down there. Well, I guess I am sure. Kind of. Is it a weird jail cell, like a bathtub? That's what it appears. However, upon closer examination, that looks like brick. That looks like brick to me. Brick, as usual. Brick covered up. Thought you could hide from me. And here, this looking very old indeed. All this look normal. All this overly complicated under subterranean construction, the wrought iron indoors, and this looking very modern. Everything from the symbols here to the herringbone here to the quite interesting, very modern, I'm sure, decor, but nothing to see here. This is the Jewish Community Center, incorporated in 1930. However, the roots go back to the city's first YMHA, the Young Men's Hebrew Association. Hadn't heard of that version. This reflecting a progressive period in American history that resulted in the provision of services and facilities for the underprivileged and for minority/ethnic groups. This reflects national and local efforts to facilitate coordination and effective work among Jewish, social, athletic, cultural, and charitable organizations by gathering them all under one roof. Do tiny windows make sense? No. But this is a 61,000 square foot building with amazing accoutrements from the old world. The well-known architect Arthur Brown, and the associated local firm of Hyman and Appleton. It's weird. Of all the San Franciscan architects that we come across, they're all very well-known and prominent, allegedly, even if this is the first we've heard of them. Now, perhaps this is from the Bakewell and Brown fictional duo. In that case, we have heard of him before. In this classical revival style building with Art Deco details designed in a Mediterranean style. Brown also designed the nearby synagogue. However, the eclectic design and use of the style suggest the process of assimilation of European Jewish immigrants and the direct efforts to secularize service and recreation to benefit the broader community. Now explain why they're on every other building. What's weird about this document is now it goes into the literally Jewish history of, it says Part 1, Jewish Immigration Patterns in the United States, and it begins in 1815. In the period of 1815 until 1900, the peak years of German immigration were between 1840 and 1870, and then from the 1900s till 1930s, and then the 1980s and 1990s, they got a bunch of Russian Jews who came over from the former Soviet Union. You see what I mean about no building can just be on its own without a narrative telling the story of San Francisco, and that's basically what this is. This is a 57-page document about this building that literally is just about the history of San Francisco and the Jewish immigration there. So it's like, if there's no narrative you can tie to it, they just don't care about it. So here we are, while some fool waxes on about Jewish immigration history and the YMHA, and that's an interesting picture. Not sure what to think about that. Looks like the Eye of Sauron, the top of an obelisk or something, and a very curiously ornamented place. Hyman Appleton and Arthur Brown selected in 1930. They completed the drawings a year later, and they laid the cornerstone a year later, and it was formally opened in 1933. Who would have guessed? I wonder why that number. There is, of course, a basement, but you already knew that. A prominent skylight. It was probably a dome or something. And, very interesting decor all over. That looks like an owl. Kind of a creepy empty pool. This is an interesting one. We're told this here is the Nunes Dairy clay tile silo. We're told that the use of hollow clay tiles is unusual for this Central California region, appearing unique. Most of the silos are made of concrete rings bound together with iron bands. This one's 40 feet high. It's constructed of square red clay hollow tiles marked by a thin vertical line pattern. Square red clay hollow tiles. I'm starting to wonder about these hollow tiles that they claim, because though this was demolished in 2001, this project was undertaken to mitigate the effects of placing 1,000 housing units on the ranch site, demolishing all the existing ranch properties. It's the only reason why they took a picture of it. So goodbye ranch, hello thousands of properties. And here in this clay tile, we're told, building, aside from the entrance here, what happens when we get up closer? What do we find? Now, maybe it's just me, but this looks like brick. I don't know. Brick, and this is just a patterned surface, textured to look like something else. This ain't no hollow tile. To me, anyway, this looks like old brick. Can't tell without being there in person, but with everything we've seen, I wouldn't be surprised. And so, yeah, this dumpy old farm and ranch and everything on it, these people probably made out like bandits. California bought the land and turned it into 1,000 homes. Not a bad position to be in when your house looks like that. That's interesting. Yep, old Dinah, the old steam tractor. Used and abandoned, just like all of us. Here we are down here in Death Valley. Look at the things that look very dead indeed. And very curious. Very interesting indeed what's going on out here. Hard to say, but this hardly looks like just wilderness. Looks like they are tunneling into old structures or something. And some random tiles from the old world that we're going to photograph here. Not sure what they're part of, but no doubt some building that's being torn down and repurposed. I guess you can't tear down what's already torn down, can you? Tear down what's already torn down, you know what I mean. Fuck off, Jimmy. This is the Ernst Mueller House. In the 1880s, George and William Chafee formed a colony called the Etiwanda Colony. They purchased 1,000 acres with water rights for $1.50 an acre from Captain Garcia, and they organized a water company. There was a new colony. Early crops were oranges, apricots, muscat, grapes, lemons, and 1,500 acres were under cultivation. There were raisins backed by Etiwanda. 10 years later, about 1,000 people lived here, and Mr. Mueller settled in here with his wife and 3 sons. One daughter who died at the age of 4. But they built this small house here. Small house, sure. At the time, it was two-story cannot be attributed to any architect. He had been fortunate in picking his lemon crop prior to the freeze of 1913, we're told, which devastated the citrus industry in Southern California. And with the proceeds from that lemon crop, he was able to have this house constructed. I know that much, but they don't know who built it. 64 acres of agricultural land, 30 acres planted with grapes and citrus. They maintained a flock of several thousand laying hens and 4 milk cows. Ernest Mueller was a prominent citrus grower. Citrus fruit was shipped by the association under the labels Victor, Wanda, and Spray. You may be familiar with some of those brands, particularly Spray. Post-World War II, however, industrial plants replaced agriculture as the economic base for the area. Land was sold, subdivided, most of the citrus had been sold, transformed from agriculture to housing tracts. And now it's just formed into part of Rancho Cucamonga. And of course, the church owns this building now. And everything on this site is basically going to be destroyed if it hasn't already. So, there it is. Of course, I knew it was here. The construction of State Route 30 from Fort Hill Boulevard in the city of San Bernardino would have an adverse effect on this Ernst Mueller house by going right through it. So, there was an agreement made, and it was recorded in the way that I've just explained to you, with the pictures that I've just shown you, and it was accepted by the advisory council. Probably there was some money attached, and the mitigative stipulations would replace the 1904 magnolia trees, which were removed during construction, and to install a retaining wall on the property. Orange trees were removed, and they'll be replaced at a ratio of 5 to 1. But, unfortunately, the property must go. Same with this birthday candle building. And of course, the old world style, the parapets and all that, are increasingly obvious, as well as the foundational issues that continue to plague all these properties. Every single one built in this certain time frame. Undeniable, unescapable, unavoidable foundational ruins here, old retaining walls here, looking older than dirt. Weird basements, all the same things that you've come to expect from this old world. Not a surprise left. And, is this really necessary? We get it. It's for babies. For doll babies, for that matter. And what is this, a thrift store? No, I don't like the layout of that bathroom. Here's the beautiful canal cutting through the landscape. And that's where we stopped it, right there. Yep, all of your water are belong to us. And here we're gonna start a nice lake here, probably flooding out some of the city that's down there, as it usually tends to be. It's an interesting thing that we are back here at the Coulot building, you may recall, from earlier. It has been damaged by fire and water, we are told. And you may recognize it from being in Sacramento on 812J Street. And I suppose that makes sense, in a way, as you'll see in a moment. Although this amazing column does not make sense. This here doesn't make sense at all. Now, how are you going to explain this one? Let's see. Of course, it's built in 1861, 2 stories high. Nathaniel Goodell put a more decorative facade on the second and first floors. And it was used as a saloon and a women's clothing store and all sorts of things until it was purchased by Hickman and Coleman Real Estate Company and remodeled. And of course, the street level was raised, is what they say, leaving this here. This is the original modest brick structure on it. And then the disastrous floods, and then they raised the building up to here. That's what they say. Underneath here, looking interesting, though. Not looking like a modest brick structure. Does it? Looking actually like a substantial brick structure, complete with brick ceiling. Which, that's curious. Why one would make a brick ceiling. An arched brick ceiling at that. And here's more brick underneath here. And underneath this entire area. I wonder if it was obvious to anyone else as this was happening. How ludicrous this looks. The whole thing. A city underneath a city. It's not looking like a home under here. Looking like something else entirely underneath all this. It's pretty incredible that they would try to pass this off the way they did. And that people bought it. Here we're at the Workman House and Temple Family Homestead Museum. Virtually no data listed about this bad boy, but we can see there's more going on than meets the eye, of course. Very stylized home, and very lovely. And yet, it takes a bit of a twist once we go into the subterranean levels. As you can see here, the basement, completely made from brick, hinting at an even lower level, or lower doorways, really. Hinting at, I said, I can't be for certain. And not looking very normal at all, is it? Brick everywhere, underneath everything. Floor brick. Brick here, brick everywhere, brick here. It's almost as if they're punching the holes to let us know. Here, this must be the same room. No? Some sort of attic, and you can see the original brick structure here, and this must be the chimney. And of course here and here, the whole thing, it's wood underneath the brick. It's just unbelievable. And that pretty much wraps up the Historical American Building Survey for California. Now, let me be clear. These surveys that were taken in the 30s and in the 60s that we're going over, wow, that's an old building here. How to explain that one? They primarily consist of this is the surveys that they took to sort of take inventory of everything they had in the nation at this time. It is not an all-inclusive list of everything that's registered historical in California, or any state for that matter. It's just this particular to this survey. Now, personally, I found this survey to be very military heavy and full of repeats and skipping a lot of the grandeur and some of the cool and more interesting old buildings that California has to offer. So I'm actually going to follow this up with a look at today's historical structures as they stand. It's a lot more individual houses and properties and things like that. And I think that will be a nice way to wrap this part of it up for now. Not gonna lie, there are probably thousands more photographs like this from the engineering record of various missile silos and bridges and train tracks and hydro engineering plants and all sorts of things like that. Aren't necessarily part of the survey, but they're included here and really kind of bogged it down. But there's a ton of that left. And maybe one day I'll come back and get into some of that, some of the old narratives surrounding some of this stuff. But for now, I think I'm going to move on to a different state and see how it stacks up after I kind of show what's going on, what some of these buildings look like now in California. And I think you'll be surprised, really, at a lot of the beautiful things that are left and a lot of the things that they did not cover in this survey. They seemingly only cared about anything that with which they could promote a narrative. Anything that had a story they talked about. Anything that told the story of California, per se, the way they wanted it to be told. Many things just straight up ignored. Things were pretty obvious to me and probably would be pretty obvious to some of you as well. I mean, while we're looking at, this house here, we're ignoring this wreckage here and this here. There's just so much history here to unpack and stuff that we're not being told. The stuff that they're trying to gloss right over. But I don't think that our investigation of this state is over. It's just going to develop into a new chapter. And I will be, as far as the historical American building surveys go, I'm going to jump all the way across the nation to Rhode Island next, as per request. See how the surveys compare. If you've made it this far, you're insane, and I salute thee. And this one was a bit dry, a little boring. For that I apologize. But I will see you soon.